Picture this: a blizzard, -20, the kind of cold that can kill an unprepared man in one night. And yet, entire Viking households, 30 people, 10 cows, all their supplies, survived for months tucked inside a single wooden room, the longhouse. How? This wasn't a fairy tale, it was physics. Airflow, radiant heat, thermal mass. The Vikings understood it all, even without textbooks. They built a complete three-stage engineering system that turned their home into a highly efficient thermal machine. They didn't just endure the cold, they hacked it. Today, we are reverse engineering this lost system, step by step. The first stage, building the fortress itself. The first stage of the system was the shell itself. The Vikings knew that heat rises, so their first brilliant move was to go down. Many longhouses weren't built on the ground, they were built into it. The floor was often dug 2 or 3 feet below the Earth's surface. This wasn't just a foundation, it was a critical engineering choice. The Earth itself provided a massive layer of geothermal insulation, instantly protecting the living space from the surface wind chill. The pit-style hearth was a key part of this design, keeping the fire below the draft line, where cold air skims over the top and the embers stay hot all night. Next, they created the insulation envelope. Vikings lined the inside of their thick turf or timber walls with reindeer and seal hides. The physics is simple. Every strand of fur traps millions of tiny air pockets. This loft slows down convection, the churn of warm air leaving and cold air sneaking in. It was like lining the house with thousands of tiny thermoses. But the most bizarre insulation trick was in the air. Longhouses had low roofs and only a small smoke hole. They intentionally let the smoke hang under the rafters, creating a thick, hazy smoke blanket. This layer of hot, smoky air physically stopped the rising heat from escaping, trapping it below where people lived. It was a counterintuitive masterpiece. They used pollution as a thermal shield. Now, the fortress was built and insulated. But how did they actively generate heat inside it? For that, they needed stage 2, the engine. The heart of the longhouse was the fire, but the Vikings knew a simple flame was wasteful. They needed to capture and control every bit of energy it produced. They did this with a brilliant 2-part engine. Part 1. The reflector, active heat. The fire wasn't just left in the open pit. Vikings would often build a wall of flat stones or stacked logs behind the hearth. This wasn't just a windbreak, it was a heat mirror. The wall would catch the infrared radiation flying away from the living area and bounce it back, effectively doubling the fire's efficiency without using a single extra log. It's the same physics as the silver foil in a modern thermos. Part 2. The battery, passive heat. The second part was pure genius, stone heat batteries. The Vikings knew the fire wouldn't last all night, but hot stones would. They would roll large, dense rocks, like granite, directly into the fire pit, letting them soak up heat for hours. They were charging these stones. Stone has a high thermal mass. It absorbs energy slowly and gives it back just as slowly. Long after the fire died to embers, these batteries would continue to radiate a steady, gentle heat throughout the night, preventing the lethal temperature drop. It was a prehistoric electric blanket, powered by stone and physics. This 2-part engine, the reflector actively pushing heat and the stones passively storing it, kept the longhouse livable. But even this system wasn't enough to heat the whole space. The final stage of the system relied on the inhabitants themselves. The Vikings knew that the most valuable heat source was their own bodies, and they engineered their social life to capture it. First, shared body heat. Vikings didn't sleep in private rooms. That was a fatal waste of energy. They slept side by side on long, raised wooden benches that ran the length of the hall. This wasn't just communal, it was a community heat bank. A single body loses heat from every exposed surface. But when you press 2, 3, or more bodies together, you dramatically reduce the surface area exposed to the cold. Like logs in a fire, a stack glows hotter and longer than a single ember. The leader would ensure the most vulnerable. Children and elders were placed in the warmest, most protected spots. It wasn't just social, it was thermal strategy. Second, wearable insulation. The Vikings wore their heaters on their backs. They relied on thick, layered wool cloaks. Wool is nature's miracle fiber. Its crimped, undulatas fibers trap air, the real insulator, and it famously retains up to 80% of its insulating value even when soaking wet. This was critical in a damp, smoky longhouse. This human system, trapping their own collective body heat on raised platforms and wrapping it in water-resistant wool, was the final layer of defense. It proves that the Vikings turned every single thing, even their own bodies, into a tool for survival. So there you have it. The Vikings survived the Arctic winter not because of one magic trick, but because of a complete three-stage system. First, they built the fortress, an insulated shell dug into the earth, lined with fur, and capped with a blanket of smoke. Second, they fired up the engine, using reflector walls to actively push heat and stone batteries to passively store it. And third, they utilized the inhabitants, capturing their own collective body heat in communal beds and locking it in with wearable wool insulation. This wasn't just a house, it was a thermal machine. It proves the Vikings weren't just warriors. They were masters of physics, conduction, convection, and radiation. They live-tested these principles in the harshest laboratory on Earth. Now, I want to hear from you. Which part of this three-stage system do you find the most ingenious? The smoke blanket, the stone batteries, or the communal heat banks? Let me know in the comments. And if you value this kind of practical, ancient wisdom, subscribe to Nordic Lorekeeper. We bring the past back to life every week. Skål,